Okay. Our speaker today is Meredith Ryncarz, a former college art professor who turned into a destination wedding photographer with Meredith Ryncarz Photography. Recently, she was named one of the top photographers in the South by South Magazine, and her work can be seen in Forbes, the New York Times, and Southern Living. As a military spouse, Meredith has crafted a business that is not situated in one regional market, but rather is mobile to suit the lifestyle of her family, allowing her to restart her business multiple times over the past decade. She has pioneered a system for relocation and geographical growth throughout her company. And her company name is the Restart Specialist. So let's give a welcome to Meredith, and I'm turning the mic to you.
Okay. Hi, guys. Apologies for the noise in the background. We had a quick little technical change. So I'm used to presenting in person, so give me just a second. Let's make sure that this is being shared correctly for everyone. Now, while this is being shared, I will not be able to see the chat. So if y'all don't mind, I will have time at the end.
I'll monitor it for you.
And let's see if this will do what it's supposed to do. How's that? Good? Hopefully everybody can see.
Full screen, you're good.
Full screen, amazing, wonderful. Okay. Hopefully we'll turn this off. There we go. He likes to make noise. Okay, so I am the Restart Specialist that came out of having to move a business multiple times and accidentally now creating two. So I'm excited to share with you guys how to get to yes. As wedding professionals, that's really the biggest part of getting started is have to book those clients and you have to get them to yes. And as you progress through what clients are looking for changes, your business starts to change. And there we go. I have a question for y'all. So I'm very interactive. And like I said, this is generally taught in person. So my question for y'all today is, when it comes to sales, do you feel like you're playing a football game with no rules, or even rugby, which to me is even more, I don't understand it at all. So do you feel like when you are going through that process as a planner, a florist, venue owner, photographer, do you feel like you're playing a game of football where you don't know the rules when it comes to sales? Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay. So today we're going to talk about getting to yes, and that's going to include things from a variety of backgrounds outside of the wedding industry. I love the wedding industry. I've been a part of it for 16 years at this point, but I find that when it comes to sales, when it comes to getting to yes, places outside of the wedding industry are my go-to for learning better tactics, better processes. So that comes down to core needs, sales blocks, certain sales tactics, and then we're going to deal with some objections at the end. That's my favorite part because that's where a lot of us get stuck and we end up losing the sale that we could have potentially already made. So starting with core needs. Now, Normally, like I said, I would do this in person, but we can kind of all see each other a little bit in the video. So what I'd like you to do is to draw the letter E right now in front of you. Not with a pencil, but with your finger in the air. Just draw the letter E. Okay. Now I want you to ask yourself, was that letter E facing you? Was it oriented to you? Or was it oriented to face away from you? Was it a capital E? Was it a lowercase e? So most of us, feel free to answer that in the chat if you want. Most of us draw this letter based on ourselves and not on others. So when we're drawing it based on our orientation, based on our ability to see it as a letter E versus doing it backwards for the people that are in front of us so that it's oriented towards them. And I do this because I want you to think about not just your core needs, but the core needs of the people that you're potentially serving. And we must learn to take that perspective on because we're serving those individuals. And our sales process should be based on them, not us. Because people want to be seen, they want to be heard, and they want to be understood. So we're going to talk about how to kind of flip that script a little bit today. Because when you know the emotional drivers and you can frame the benefits of any deal that you're working on in a language that resonates with your clients, then you're going to make that sale. This is a quote from Chris Voss, who is or was one of the top FBI hostage negotiators and has written some books on that and does a lot of sales coaching and psychology coaching. So when you get the chance, check him out. Great information. He also has a masterclass. So I want you to think about what is first important to you, because first we have to learn ourselves before we can learn our clients. What is most important to you? Is it family? Is it security? Is it money? Feel free, since I can't see the chat, or I could, but then I'm going to get lost in the tech. Feel free to chime in. What is something that's important to you? Or if somebody wants to read the chat off to me here. Family, security. Okay, found a way to pull up the chat as well. All right, so family and security. Now I want you to think about how to plan a trip. This will make sense later, I promise you, as to how it kind of goes into the sales and the psychology part. When you plan a trip, do you ask everyone to go? Do you plan ahead? Now I know I'm talking to planners, but do you plan ahead, or do you just say, you know what, we're going to go and we're going to figure it out when we get there? Do you want options, choices? Do you pack everything in the kitchen sink or just the bare necessities? The reason I'm asking all of these questions is because at the center of these questions is actually core needs. And when we understand core needs and how people operate off of them, we can actually sell to them better. We can actually meet them where they are. So this information that I'm about to share with you, and the reason I'm asking these questions, is based off of something called spectrum training. And I highly recommend, if you get the chance to attend a spectrum training, that you do so. So please understand, This is data, psychology, information, not my own ideas. Okay, so the first core need is blue. And most of my clientele that I'm working with are blues. We got somebody, there we go. So most of the clients that I'm working with are, their core need is considered blue. They are focused on meaningful relationships. They tend to be intuitive. They tend to be authentic. They crave connection. Yeah, and I did say spectrum training, Sharon. Spectrum, you got it right. So they make up 15% of the population. They strive for peace and they strive for harmony. So if I understand that that is my client's core need, then when I am working with them, meeting with them to potentially offer wedding photography services or whatever service you're offering, I can start to customize the way that I'm talking to them based on their core need. So think through like who you typically work with. This might be your primary customer, or it might not be. The next one is greens. Greens' core need is to be seen as competent, and for those around them that they're working with to be competent as well. So when you have that father of the bride who's asking you, well, how many years have you been in business? And what happens if this happens? And how are you going to handle this problem? They very well might be a green. They value quality, excellence, high expectations. They're methodical. So you may be asking, well, why does this matter? If I'm in a sales call and I am meeting with a couple and one of them is a blue and they're driven by relationships, and I have a green who's driven by competency, and I am talking all about connection and family, and I'm not talking at all about quality or how logistics work, then I'm only meeting the core needs of one of the two of those people that are in front of me. Make sense so far? Put a thumbs up in the chat if it does. Or just say yes and let me know. So when we think about greens, awesome, I'm glad it's making sense. When we think about greens, they make up 15% of the population. They are the least understood, and it's difficult for them to turn off their brain. They're probably the client that is texting you at 10 o'clock at night, asking about something that they're now panicking about, even though it's 90 days out from the wedding, and they really they need to shut their brain off, but they don't know how to. Titles have little impact on greens. They don't care about your awards or this or that unless it leads to proving your competency and your capability. They do not care. You have to prove to them that you are capable. You have to prove to them that you're competent. Golds. So golds are driven by duty and responsibility. They are the history keepers. They are super organized. They have a strong sense of right and wrong. They are your list makers. So if you have a couple coming up to you and one of those two is like, okay, here's all the list of the things that we need to do, or here's the list of things that are important to me, they very well may be a gold. And how you approach them and how you serve them needs to be customized to that in order for them to feel like you are a rock star and that they want to work with you. They make up 45% of the population. They cherish home and they cherish family. They're the ones that on a sales call are saying, it's really important for me to get a picture of my grandmother and my aunt and my sister, and that we have these family-centric events. And so if I'm working with a gold versus a blue, I'm going to change what I'm saying. I'm going to approach them differently. And then there's the oranges. And hopefully, as I'm sharing this with you, maybe you're getting a little sense of your own self and how your core need is made up, because oftentimes we superimpose our core need onto our clients and we serve them from ourselves and our own core need. And we often find that when that happens, we fall flat in what we're offering and what we're doing. So oranges are driven by freedom. That is their core need. Their motivation is super contagious. They're the cheerleaders. They're highly mobile. They're going all the time. They hate waiting on things because they want it now. It's go, 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 go. They're impulsive. They make up 25% of the population. They're free-spirited and fun-loving. And they're the ones that when I ask them, you know, if you're planning a trip, what are you doing? They're like, oh, I'm calling up my girlfriend an hour beforehand, 8 hours beforehand. I have no idea beyond where we're going, or I have no idea where we're staying, but we're going to go and we're going to have a great time. That's an orange. And if you are working with a couple and one of them is an orange, you are going to have to give them kind of guidelines where they can bounce back and forth between, so they feel like they have freedom. And you're going to have to kind of keep them from going off in left field, if that makes sense. Okay, so at the end of the day, you may be going, okay, why does this matter? Why does this matter to me? We want to be understood. The more you practice looking at these characteristics, the more that you look at these core needs that were just mentioned, then your clients are going to feel like you understand them, like you are motivated to serve them, and it's going to motivate them to want to book you. So just to kind of quickly review, greens ask things like, how long have you been in business? Can you plan a wedding here? And for me, questions like, what happens if you break a leg? What's your backup plan? They want to know that you're competent and that the logistics are handled and it's taken care of. And it's not that they don't trust you. It's that they're looking to hire somebody that is capable of what they're doing. Golds are the ones that are asking about albums. They're asking about family and how they can include them on the day. Oranges don't like to plan far ahead, like I mentioned before. They just like to see what happens and they're laid back. Blues, again, connection over everything. They want to know where the shared interests lie. So these tactics, they don't mean anything, though, if you have a money block. I can share these psychology tactics with you that I'm going to get into even further in just a minute, but they mean absolutely nothing if you have a money block. So just a thumbs up in the chat or a yes. Who here hates determining their pricing?
I don't.
You don't? That's rare. That's good. Who just knows what their markup should be in their pricing? Okay, good. I'm so glad to hear that y'all are firm on pricing. Most of the time when I speak to wedding pros, they're like, oh, that's my least favorite part. That's amazing. Okay, struggle with it a little bit. So if you can get past this, then all the rest of these sales and psychology tactics are going to work like gold. Okay. And I love hearing that y'all have these down. For those of you that either didn't want to respond in the chat or did say, yes, I struggle with this, I want you to think about coffee. Okay. And I want you to think about Starbucks. Starbucks has at the time of this data, it was 80% markup. Obviously, that's a lot more now. Okay. But if Starbucks has an 80% markup on coffee when it comes to pricing, then you can definitely charge more. You are not their banker. You are not their parents. And so when this war for the wallet starts, when the sales and psychology starts to come into play together, you have to understand that your money blocks or your money problems are not their money problems. And it sounds like most of y'all have that down pat. Because if Starbucks can charge for bean water at an 80% plus markup, you can definitely charge more as well. Okay. So I just wanted to kind of get that out of the way before we dive into the tactics. Okay. So these are some of the tactics we're going to chat about over the next couple of minutes. The empty chair, the rule of 3, 80-20, which probably most of y'all have heard of, the experience frame, and then we're going to talk about objection preparation. Okay, so empty chair. This is a tactic or a process that you can walk through with yourself. If you have other people in your business with you that are doing sales calls, that's really, really important. So you want to treat the empty chair as if your client was sitting in it, as if you were talking to them. And you want to build your sales process around this. So you want to ask yourself the question of, am I honoring my ideal client when I write this for sales emails, when I post this for social media, which will lead to sales, or when I say this in a sales call? Am I honoring my ideal client? Looking back at their core, if you know your client's core needs and you tend to serve one particular type of client, am I honoring my ideal client's core need when I write this, post this, or say this? And you need to ask this question of yourself and your staff. Does that make sense so far? Just yes, no,
Yes.
in the chat. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay. A lot of times lately, people go to ChatGPT, they type something in, give me an Instagram post for this, or give me a newsletter for that. And ChatGPT, unless you have trained it to honor your ideal client, to honor their core need, it's not meeting the needs of your sales process. It's actually harming it. Okay. Then ask, is it personal? What you're putting out there in the sales call, in the sales emails, is it purposeful? Is it personal? And then lastly, does it irritate or agitate? And I'm going to kind of get into the difference of the two because they do matter. So irritation is getting someone to do what you want them to do through what you're saying. Okay. You're irritating them to make a decision using words, using what you're saying. Agitators, if you're agitating someone to do something, you're helping someone summon their own reason for something that they ought to do. You're leading them, but not necessarily with words. Okay? You're guiding them down the path versus saying, hey, you got to book now. So there is a difference between irritation and agitation. Agitation is always better because they feel like they're making that decision on their own versus you telling them, hey, book now. Okay, rule of 3. So simply getting someone to agree to something 3 times makes them more likely to book. So when I'm talking with my clients, potential clients in a call, I'm asking them questions. I'm starting out by trying to figure out, what do I think their core need is? I'm asking them how they met. I'm asking them what they like to do together. Not just because I'm wanting to know who they are as people. That is very important to me. But I'm also listening to specific words that they're saying so that by the time I get into the middle of the call with them, pretty sure I know what their core need is. And so as I'm transitioning to the middle of the call and the end of the call, I can start to implement this rule of 3 while also utilizing those core needs. So for example, if I am talking with a gold, I'm going to start asking them about family portraits. You know, is this with your grandmother really, really important? Yes. Okay. Is this time with your mom for these portraits or this time or this thing important? Yes. At the end of the day, is it really important for you to have this, this, and this? Yes. So they've said yes 3 times. And when they start to do that, it triggers something in their brain that's very powerful that has already transitioned them into, okay, I'm going to say yes to this person. I'm going to hire them, because you're already in that positive mode of yes, yes, yes. So that rule of 3, if you can get them to say yes to things 3 times, not just something small, but larger, more emotion-filled questions are important. Okay. So let's see, Nina says, Meredith, do you think that 15 for the initial discovery call with a couple is enough time to get to know each other? I'm assuming you mean 15 minutes. My discovery calls are usually with a planner, 99% of the time. And during that time with the planner and with the couple, it's 45 minutes. Just to, I would say the initial 10 to 15 minutes is just getting to know them. And the rest of the time is talking through kind of their vision for the day and everything else. So hopefully that helps. Okay. I love quotes. I'm a big reader. And I just love this one from Mark Twain, because the right word may be effective, but no word was ever more effective as a rightly timed pause. And I love this quote because if I were to ask you to sit in a networking event, obviously we can't do that on Zoom here, but if I was to ask you to sit in a networking event and just pick a partner and sit there in silence and stare at them, it becomes very awkward. It becomes very uncomfortable. Maybe more so for extroverts than introverts, but after a period of time, we get uncomfortable with that silence. However, most of us are avoiding using this tool to our advantage. And so next time you're working with a client and you are ready to finalize that sale, stop, pause, and just stop talking. A lot of times you will find that we talk ourselves out of a sale with a potential client because we just keep talking. They've already said all the buying flags are there. They've already said yes 3 times. They've already been really excited about what you're offering to them. And then we just keep going. And we end up losing the sale because of it. So if you have communicated your value proposition with them, if you've shaped it to fit their core need, then you hand them the price, or you send the price however you do your sales call, or you get to the point where you say, I'm ready to send that, or would you like me to send that? Pause. Ask for the sale and pause in whatever format you do that. We need to let our clients do 80% of the talking, and we do 20%. That's the Pareto principle. Okay. Oftentimes we're too busy telling them about ourselves and what we can do. And in return, they're just going, I'm over this. Okay. So those are things to consider. That rightly timed pause in your tool chest. Okay. I see some questions coming through. Let's save those towards the end. And then I will answer them then. So the experience frame, I want you to think about something that you purchased that was meaningful to you. Maybe it was in the last 6 months, last year. Think about something that you purchased that was really meaningful to you. What was it? Feel free to put that in the chat, share it with everybody else. Whether it was a car, purse, a trip, whatever that was. Just go ahead and put that in there. And I want you to think about the experience around that meaningful item that you purchased. Okay. Think about the process of purchasing that item that was meaningful to you. And I want you to think about framing your sales message in an experience frame. I'm going to give an example. So if I'm selling socks to you, okay, and I tell you that this is how they're made and why they will last a long time and why you should buy them. That's, to me, at least, and to my clients, they kind of go, and? Okay. And I'm using socks because it has nothing to do with weddings and they're so mundane that we just kind of go, okay. But if I sell you socks and I say, these are really unique, they're made out of yarn from alpacas in Peru, and they're hand knit, and they're the most comfortable socks you will ever wear on the day after a wedding. We all know the wedding hangover, okay? And you're gonna feel so relaxed in these socks. They're so soft, they're like walking on clouds. Your feet are gonna feel amazing. And you're gonna wanna just curl up on the couch and relax and rest and enjoy your day off. Okay, well now I'm probably gonna pay way more for that pair of socks because there's an experience tied to it. Make sense? When you can tie something that is novel, that is unique, that elevates the value of those socks, or whatever you do as a service, then you can charge more because you framed it as an experience. I'll use photography as an example. If I say, I'm going to show up on your day, and I'm going to push a button, and I'm going to make these pictures, and I'm going to take them home, and I'm going to edit them, and I will be timely, and you will get them back. Okay, great. But if instead I say, listen, on this day, I want your relationship to come through in every frame that I take. And that 5 years down the road, you still look at those images and close your eyes and can then smell the cake that was made for you. And you can hear the orchestra start to play. And you can taste that 5-course dinner just by looking at that picture. And you can remember what your wedding party said to you and the experience that you had and the moments that you were able to savor with your significant other. And that 20 years down the road, your kids will be able to see those images and still see how your partner looks at you the same way that they did on day one. That's what I will do for you. Do you see the difference in the experience frame of when you start to change from what it is that you do to the experience that will come out of what you do? So, so very important, okay? So think about how you can elevate what you do in a form of an experience. Okay, objections. So this is where so many people get stuck. And I want you to think about either a recent objection that you yourself experienced or an objection that you heard maybe in a Facebook group or at the last conference that you went to. And if you're able to unmute and share. If not, put it in the chat. Because that's where a lot of times we get stuck. No objections? Yes, price comparison to another planner is considered an objection. Absolutely. Anything where they're objecting, there's something negative in the sales process. I'll give you an example of one from my perspective, and you may have seen this as well, and then Nina, I'll answer yours. One of the objections that we get is, well, have you ever had a wedding at this event or this venue? No, I could easily say, no, I haven't, and leave it at that. But then I've probably lost the sale, potentially. Instead, what I can say is, you know what? We have not had a wedding at that event venue before. However, even if we had, your day is going to be completely different than any other wedding. The weather will be different. The time of day of the ceremony will be different. The colors and the style and the layout are going to be different. And so even if we had, it's not going to be the same. And so what we offer is being able to come through and do a walkthrough beforehand in order to make sure that the logistics and everything for your day is taken care of. So you see how I'm taking that negative objection and I'm turning it around to be a positive thing, that even though I haven't been there, that's okay. So Nina says, is price comparison to another planner considered an objection? So when you're price comparing, again, it's almost the same thing of like, they do things differently. And here's how I do things, and here's why. Again, that understanding their core need. Most planners cannot do that unless they just intuitively understand it, where they can kind of start picking apart those things that are being said and go, okay, this person their core need is this. So I'm going to pivot my sales pitch to them in this way so that it is mirroring back what they're asking for and meeting their core need before they've ever booked me. Then at that point, comparison to another planner, you're showing up leaps and bounds above what else they're doing. Sharon says, price is too expensive, client decides to go day of. So this is something I see in every, whether it's photographer, planner, venue coordinator, venue, whatever the case may be. Sometimes the client is just not your client. They just aren't. And if they decide to go day of, if you don't want to offer day of, don't. There's a point at which sales and psychology will work and will help you to book the clients that are meant for you. But there's also a point at which you just have to say, you know what, that is not my client. And I know that from the perspective of, if you don't have a planner, you are not my client. You're not. And I'm able to release that. Okay. Okay. So what we're going to do is move into, I know that there's some other questions that have come through the chat and I've probably missed them as I'm sharing. So what I'm going to do is move to There we go. Okay. I'm going to move to Q&A. I'm going to leave this QR code up. And we can talk about that in a minute, but that's just resources and access to certain things. So what questions do y'all have? I find that there are typically a lot about core needs.
Feel free to unmute and ask Meredith questions.
Hi, this is Diane Wimbush. I don't really have a question, but I have a concern when, like, I hear that people comparing their prices to other planners and designers. But when I think about that, I think that planning, that when you're comparing, you really can't, because some planners operate out of a building or some type of property, and there's some that operate from their homes. So the overhead is going to be totally different. So of course their pricing may be a little bit higher than the person that's operating from their home.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I'm one of the few photographers in my market that has a studio space, so I have overhead. So I get that. When you sell on price, it is a race to the bottom. And I'm not even factoring in the discussion about overhead at all. And that's why sales and psychology is so important, because you're not talking about apples to oranges, because that's what this is. I'll give you an example, and then Terry, I see your hand. If you have ever gone into a store and you've seen apples, and you see this one apple and it's $1, and then you see this other apple and it's $2, and then you see this third apple and it's $15, you're gonna go, why? Well, there's no explanation. It's just they're apples, right? But instead, going back to that framing of experience, if I say this $15 apple was grown on a 3rd-generation farm in Brazil, and it's organic, and there's only 30 of them sold in the US at this store a year, and that's why it's this much, blah, blah, blah. And I'm adding value to this without saying, well, it's expensive because it's expensive. I'm framing it in the experience frame. And therefore now, okay, I'm interested. Does this taste different? I want that. It's a limited offer. It is, there's very few of them. All of those things. So that's why I never compete on price, because I will lose at that point. That's the hardest way to do business. Terry.
Hi, are you hearing me?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Thanks, Meredith. Great presentation. I had a question, about, the millennials and Gen Zs. How is it sometimes they don't want to have a consultation or even, have a call. They really just want your rates. I'm a planner, and I'm all for consultations, and I agree that, we need to know our leads' potential or their core needs, right? But how do you, if they don't want to meet with you and they're just DMing you, how do we get to their core needs? Is there a strategy that you could share?
Yeah. There's a couple ways to go about this, again, depending on what this starts to come down to your workflow and your process and your systems. One of those ways is to just send them a quick video. If they're reaching out to you via DM and they're reaching out via Instagram, send them a quick video and just be like, hey, you know, this is kind of who we are, and I'd love to know about you, and da da da. And you can go back and forth via video, little snippets in Instagram. If you want to do that, I personally don't. But we only take 10 weddings a year. And so I'm willing to kind of, that's my barriers to entry. And if you want to go a different route, you can also send a questionnaire. I find that if you make it fun for them, then they want to do it because they're sharing about themselves. You're asking questions like, what's the most important thing to you on the wedding day? And these are things you're already asking them. And if you don't know the core need when they book you, it's also a good thing to go back and try and figure that out. So maybe you have a client that's already booked you and your wedding is a year, 2 years away with them. And you say, you know, I really want to know this so that I'm going above and beyond what's expected. So those are some ways that you can go about utilizing tech in a way that meets them where they are. If they're not wanting to do that consultation call and they're just doing the pricing and packages, please. Other questions? Y'all are quiet on this Wednesday.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you give us a sample dialogue for some of these scenarios on sales?
Sure. Well, you know what, Ricky? You volunteered. So let's pretend like Ricky is, hold on.
I'm a wedding planner.
Your wedding planner. Okay, cool. So let's pretend like Ricky is getting married. And, you know, I don't know anything about her. And she has circumvented all of my barriers to entry and just called my cell phone. And she's asked, you know, are you available for this date? I'm looking to get married, etc. And my first question is, Ricky, that's so exciting. Yes, we are available for that date. And I would ask, you know, do you have a planner? And if she says no, I'm not going to hang up the phone. I'm not going to end the call. But what I would say at that point is, okay, great. You know, here's some information about why we would need to have a planner, but let's keep talking. And I would want to know, Ricky, you know, where did you meet your significant other? And yes, it's a basic question. Sometimes that just starts them talking. And then from there, so Ricky, are you married?
Yes.
Okay. So where did you meet your significant other?
We were introduced at a very wholesome activity, a charity dinner dance.
What charity?
It's called Party with a Purpose, and it takes place on the Thanksgiving weekend before Christmas, and you have to come in with a Toys for Tots for donation to the children.
Okay. So that Party for a Purpose, what about that really hit your heart? Is there something about that particular charity that just really pulled you to attend?
I don't know. I really don't know what it was. It was just, my girlfriend said to me, there's going to be single guys there. I said, okay, great. And so 5 minutes before we were supposed to leave, or she was supposed to come over and we would go together, she says, I'm not going. I said, you're going to waste your $100 just to get in, to pay for the charity or whatever it was. She says, I don't care. I just don't want to go. So I ended up going myself, and I just I walked in. I brought my toy. I put it in the bin, and then I recognized somebody else that I knew there, and I was so glad I did, because I didn't really feel comfortable going there alone, right? And so, and by the way, that girl is no longer a friend of mine. So, so I walked in, I recognized somebody that I knew from our athletic club, the gym. I said, hello, blah, blah, blah. He introduced me to my husband, and I kind of knew right away this was going to be my husband. He didn't know that yet, but I knew it.
And see, that she's already sharing a ton of information that I can pick up on. Okay. So she didn't feel comfortable going into a space that she didn't necessarily know anybody. So Ricky, do you find that you are a heavily leaning introvert, heavily leaning extrovert, or kind of right in the middle?
Depends upon the situation. I would
Mhm.
say generally in the middle. There's some times when I'm very shy, and I was shy as a kid. And then there's other times where I'm very assertive because I want to make the sale, or because I want people to know what it is that I do.
Yeah. So see how I'm starting to pick up on things from what she's saying, that I'm going to start reframing that. So as I start to continue to talk to her, I'm going to ask questions about, you know, is your spouse, or, you know, in the case if she was calling for a wedding consult, you know, is your significant other the loud, boisterous life at the party, or do you find that you're more that space? And the reason I'm asking that is it starts to inform how I'm going to sales, what questions I'm going to ask. If she's an introvert, I'm not going to be as pushy. If she's more of an extrovert, she's going to talk more probably to me. And then I might ask questions like, well, you know, you and your significant other, what do you love to do together? Obviously, charity is really important to y'all. What are other things? And I might ask, you know, if she mentions trips, I might ask, you know, how do you go about planning trips? Do you love spontaneity, or do you love to really plan things out? Well, that answers whether she's an orange or whether she's not. So I'm starting to frame these questions not only to get to know what my clients like to do, but where I think they're going to fall in that core need. That's that first 15 minutes. And just by asking how you met starts to open up that door and that pathway to get really curious. I will say, if you're dealing with an introvert, the biggest thing you got to say at the beginning of that sales call is, hey, this is kind of the agenda for this. And I want to start out by getting to know how you guys met and a little bit more about you, because that informs how I approach your wedding day and customize it to you. Because this is a collaboration between me as an artist and you as the client that is commissioning me to create this for you. So that makes that introvert feel like, okay, I feel safe to start answering these questions and opening up a little bit more. And the extrovert's already there. The extrovert's like, let's go, I'm on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we sort of did that with one couple. I asked them how they met. They met for one of those coffee dates in a donut shop because they both really like donuts. And then our slogan for the wedding was donuts too, I do.
Yeah.
And so we had, you know, a donut wall. We had donuts as the logo, as part of their invitation, and their welcome sign, which I designed for them as well. Everything. It was so cute. She just loved it. She said, let's go with this. This is great. And I said, oh,
But you listened.
yeah, so much fun. I like
Yeah.
donuts too. What is your favorite flavors? You know, all that stuff.
And those are things that when you start to understand what's important to them, and then it's not just, it's going beyond what we normally do. Okay. We as wedding professionals, we want to know about our clients. We ask questions about our clients, but we very rarely actually listen to understand what their core need is. And so going beyond just asking about their donuts and asking about the flavors, listening to what they're saying about maybe it's a family member that introduced them to this donut shop first, and then they met their significant other there. And then, okay, how important is family to you? Those are things where you start to pick apart to find ways to figure out where is their core need? How do I meet them there? How do I adjust my sales call to them? Yeah. So hopefully that is helpful. If you guys have additional questions, because I know we're limited to an hour and it's hard to kind of answer all the questions. If you do this QR code, there is a discount code for the rest of this month, full 50 or hour 50. The hour 50 is for 50% off of a one-on-one 1-hour coaching call. The full 50 is for 8 hours. There's also a link in that QR code for a discovery call that you can just set it up and we can chat for 30 minutes. So hopefully this is helpful. Feel free to reach out to me. Thank you guys for having me. And I hope to continue this conversation with y'all outside of just the Zoom call.
Thank you, Meredith. I appreciate what you have presented to all of us today. It helps to show that sales isn't just about putting up some pricing, but it requires a little bit of head thought to go into it in order to relate to clients as you're hopefully getting them to sign the contract. The recording will be available for ABC members. And I invite you all to go to the website and the abcweddingplanners.com and check out the education upcoming events to see what else is coming up and to spread the word that we have this and that we want more participants. And if you have someone that you feel that even may be a good speaker, send that information to Shelby. And a final reminder that in November, we have our WOW conference. At the end of June, the hotel registration is going to go up. The rooms are going to go up. So now is the time to get your registration in because that's our big educational opportunity. So thank you all for signing in. Look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye.